like 20 to 30, and I went for an hour. Not great. All this to say is I've learned my lesson since then, I like to believe, and I won't put you through that today. But what happened is that there was an image of what church services look like in my mind. Like I had a preconceived notion of what they looked like, and I imported that into this new context, this new space. And while the crowd was incredibly gracious, there was room to learn. There was flexibility that I did not have. And I think as I look at this passage, one of the things that just struck me so deeply, whatever, we were talking about all these other things, but I just could not get my eyes off of the word church in this passage. Like, this is one of the few times, actually there are three times that Jesus uses the word church in all of the New Testament. I mean, it comes up in the letters from Paul, but like in terms of Jesus himself, him actually using the word church, this is one of three times. And so because of that, it's like, oh, what do you mean when you say church? If we could use this passage almost as like ecclesiology, what do we learn about the church from this? And the problem is we have preconceived notions of the church. Things that we've heard or seen, things that we import onto that word. Even when I'm looking at this text, I have to like do mental gymnastics to untangle some of the things that I naturally associate with church. Right? We think about buildings and sanctuaries and stained glass, and we say that's a church. We think about gatherings and worship services with songs and sermons, and we say, I went to church. We had church today. Church was good today. There's other things, expectations, other images we import on church. The people who call me when I'm sick. The music that fits my preferences. The people who are exactly like me. And sometimes the church has negative connotations. It's the backbiting, it's the hypocrisy, the politics. And the question for us this morning is, do our definitions of the church align with what Jesus says about it? If this is one of the three times that Jesus uses the word church in the Gospels, what can we extrapolate about the church from this passage? And what I saw was maybe three things. I promise I won't be an hour. But that it's built on the confession of Jesus as Messiah, that it's actually Jesus who builds his church. So on this rock, the confession, I will build my church. It is something that he builds. He does the work. And then the gates of hell will not prevail against it. It is indomitable. It is victorious even. The rock is this confession, a revelation that comes only from God. And what he is building is not a building, but it is a people. And this people that he is assembling, they are offensive and unstoppable. It begins with the confession. You know, earlier this week, I was trying to squirrel away to write this talk, knowing that Jesus Encounter was coming. So I was like, how can I get this thing done as quickly as possible so that I can like be focused for Jesus Encounter? And like, of course, you know, do the work of sermon prep and all that. And so we office in this like super nice co-working space for right now before we move into Cohatch, which we are super excited about. But we're in this co-working space, and it's like super fancy, and there's like glass everywhere, and it's got all these like cool little places to work. And so I was like tucked away in one of the focus rooms trying to work on my talk. And I think I had finished eating lunch, and I was going to the dishwasher to put away my fork. And usually every day around 2 o'clock, there's some sort of like snack break that they take. And whatever, you can check the app or look at the bulletin and see what the snack is. And so I was just thinking, all right, it's just our usual snack tray, which is usually kind of like a pretty mild affair. Like people are out and getting things, like they'll get the Oreos or their ramen or whatever. Their seaweed, some people, it's an option. It's not one I take, but some people take it. And this day in particular, it was like just buzzing in Industrious, the place where we were working. Oops, I said it on camera. But it was buzzing. It was like a lot of activity that was happening. And what was going on, I forgot, was that there was a community market that was taking place. And so every like businesses were out there, and there were vendors, and there were snacks, and there were drinks, and people were definitely drinking on the clock, which I'm like, it's not 5 o'clock here. It might be 5 o'clock somewhere. It's not 5 o'clock here. And you're getting on the clock paid, and you're like buzzed a little bit right now. Definitely buzzed. But anyway, I'm like putting stuff away, and I get roped into this conversation with these guys around the dishwasher. And I'm trying really hard not to engage. Like if I was a better Christian, listen to me, if I was a better Christian, I'd be like, let's go. Let's have an evangelistic conversation. But in my head, I'm thinking, I've got to talk to right. Jesus Encounter is coming. We'll talk some other time. Like, can we not have a discussion? But of course, I'm wearing my underground jacket. They see that I work for the underground. They're like, oh, underground, tell me about that. What is that? I'm like, okay, now I got to go through the whole thing because the underground, you can't just explain it in a sentence. It's a whole paragraph. And then it invites all these questions. And so I'm like, ugh. And so we're having this conversation. And one of the guys, he's like, oh yeah, that's really interesting. I do. And of course, because you don't want to be a jerk, you don't want to be a bad conversationalist. You're like, well, what do you do? And this guy's like, oh, well, I consult with businesses. I try to prepare them to be acquired. So when people are interested in buying a business, I come in and I do this thing. But I do this from like a metaphysical perspective or something. Like, I forgot what he said. It was the most confusing thing in the world. If it's confusing to you, it was confusing to me. But it was something in the metaphysical realm. And I was like, good on you, man. Let me go back to what I was doing. But he wanted to continue this conversation of like, oh, it sounds really cool what you're doing. I know this guy. Maybe I can connect you guys. And I'm like, okay, sure. And he's like, yeah, this is my work and this is what we do. And religions, he kept saying this thing like, what religions all have in common is like, we're all human. And that's what they all have in common. I'm getting my doctor in metaphysical studies, doctor of divinity. And I was like, where are you studying at? Because wherever you're studying, I do not want to go there. But he was like, yeah, I'm getting my doctor of divinity at the University of Metaphysics. And I was like, Scientology? Like, if you were to say Scientology, at least have a frame of reference for what you're saying. What you're saying is nonsense. But I was just trying to get out of the conversation. And I was just like, maybe. And in my head, I was like, what is actually happening here? Why am I in this conversation? And even the statement that all religions, what they all have in common is that we're all human. It's like, maybe. I haven't thought too deeply about it. But the thing that makes us different, the thing that is profoundly more important is who we say God is. And because we disagree on who God is, that changes how we view humanity, how we view our role, our purpose in the world. I mean, what is it that makes us who we are as a church? What defines Christians? The thing that's kept us united all these years, it's a recognition that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of the living God. And that is profoundly different than anything else that's out there. It's not that he's a prophet like the Muslims might say. It's not that he is, one of many gods like Hinduism might say. It's not that he's like who's God at a particular time and a manifestation of this higher entity that is only in that particular time period, and then other times and periods, these other things came along that are also part of that same God, like Baha'i might say. It's like, no, our Christology makes us who we are. And if you want to be a part of the church, that is where it begins. It begins on that. It's who we say Jesus is. And what we find is that this revelation is not something that comes by flesh and blood, but by God himself. And that means the church, by nature, is a supernatural entity. By nature, a supernatural entity. Given cosmic authority. And it only makes sense in light of the confession and to the extent that it's in line with the person who is building it. You can be a business or a social enterprise. You could be an interfaith justice organization, but you can't actually be the church because the church is built on Jesus as Lord, the Son of the living God. As basic as it is, as redundant and as unnecessary as it is, to me, I just could not shake the juxtaposition of I will build my church, and this church it's not a building, it's a people. And to me, it's just so mind-boggling because I would never say, at least, I don't know about you, but I don't walk around saying, I'm going to build some people today. I build people. No, we build buildings, right? But that's not what Jesus is talking about. The ecclesia, it's is to be called out. The ecclesia, the kaleo, it is an assembly, a gathering of people, a gathering of called out ones. This is what Jesus is building. When I think of building something, I think of buildings, but Jesus builds it differently. It seems so basic, but I have to think about that to actively undo the paradigms that are in my head. He is building a people, a group of called out ones, a family. Maybe even you could say an army that's built on this confession. Because the church is built on the revelation of something that is only given by God, the church by nature is a supernatural community. And because the church is a supernatural community, it is not something that can be built by human hands. It's only something that Jesus can do. You know, if anybody knows me, you know that I am not a handy person at all. I'm surrounded by all these guys who love working on their houses and feel deep satisfaction from completing home projects. I am not one of those people. Lucas he drives around with tools in his car at all times. You ask me for a tool, I have to ask you what that tool is. It might be in the shed. I have advanced degrees. I can't tell you the difference between a drill and an impact driver. It's unfortunate. It's the story of my life.
We love you, man. Let me know when you want to change your sink.
I appreciate that. I have never once felt happiness after completing a home project. It has not happened yet. I feel exhausted, discouraged, maybe even angry. And depending on what the project was, I am terrified for anyone who uses that thing. Because I was the one who built it. I know the mistakes I made while building it. I knew the workarounds I took around it. And that's just what I know. I'm almost confident that there's something I did right, thought I did right, that actually was not right at all. I built it, therefore I don't trust it. Lift things, carry things, move things, I got you. I'm your guy. But building requires a more skilled set of hands. And I think the reality is that we all have our thresholds. We can build up to a certain point, but once we get past something, it is officially above us. It is beyond us, and we feel insecure. I can maybe build a sandwich, but a house? No. You got to talk to Joe Carr. And Joe Carr can build a house, but a skyscraper? You might have to call somebody else. Moss Construction can build a commercial and residential building, but they can't build the church, at least not how Jesus talks about it here. Jesus is the only one who can build his church, and I think you all know that. I think you've experienced that. I mean, I think about Central House, I think about Home Team, I think about these microchurches that have been years in the works. I mean, so many different iterations of trying to love neighbors and people that have come across your path, all the effort, and actually it's Jesus who builds the church. And our attempts to build it are spurious at best. And to me, that is good news. Because what that means then is that actually the church can't be beaten. What I build is fragile, but what Jesus builds is indomitable. The church is something we join, it's something we are, but it's not something we build. It's something we partner with him in, but he is the builder. That is what Jesus does. And this is good news because if it was merely a human enterprise, we would all be dead in the water. If it were solely up to us, the church would be in complete ruins. When the latest scandal comes out or the latest podcast comes up, we'd be in shambles. It'd just be over. But because Jesus built it, it is indomitable. Some of you have heard us talk about The Insanity of God, Nick Ripken, in that book. I was brought back to that this week. And the story of Pastor Cheng. Pastor Cheng was this 83-year-old believer in China who had been arrested 3 different times for being Christian. So the first time that he got arrested, it was because he had just become a Christian, actually. So he became a Christian, arrested. That's how he starts his faith. That's a rough start. Can we agree? Like, yay, Jesus, what? I'm in prison. How did this happen? We went from real high to real low real fast. But then the second time he was arrested for leading other people to Jesus. So not that he got quiet and timid, he leveled up. He was like, all right, I'm out, I'm fresh out the pen, and guess what? Jesus is great, and arrested again. back in the pit. And then the third time he was arrested for leading a house church movement. It's like you would think, don't you learn at some point either to get better or like whatever, do something, figure something out. But he just kept getting arrested. But what Ripken found was that Pastor Chang wasn't unique. That actually this was common among all the believers that he was interacting with in China. That it was so common that believers in prison started finding each other. And what do Christians do when they find each other? They start Bible studies. They start fellowships. They start meeting for prayer and encouraging one another. And then what happens? Then from then, they started sharing their faith with other prisoners. And then the prisoners started coming to know Jesus. And then the prisoners would get out of prison, and then they go share their faith with the people outside of the prison. It's like they tried to stop this church planting movement, and instead they built another one. And that's the church that Jesus builds. It got so bad that there were too many pastors to imprison. Like, we would arrest you all, but we actually don't have space for you. So what can we do? We'll say there's a limit on how many people can meet in a given house. That's the best we could do. It's like German roaches. You try to get rid of those things, good luck. Some of you know what I'm talking about. And if you don't, you're lucky. But we fail. We drop the ball. There's fightings within the church, there's threats outside of the church, and yet the church remains, not because it was built by human hands, but because it's something that Jesus himself is building and constructing in the world. The very foundation of which is not something that's revealed by flesh and blood, but by the revelation of God to a person. And this is the church that the gates of hell can't prevail against. It's not one built on the cult of personality or false expectations or personal interest, but Jesus himself. Bound together by his blood, built on self-sacrificial love. It is victorious, it is undefeatable, it is eternal even. I just think about Jesus Encounter. In Jesus Encounter, there's a way in which your experience with Jesus is very individual in that time. But very quickly, it goes outside of you. You can't actually be a Christian just by yourself. You do have to join a team. You do have to join a family. And this is the church. The confession gives you an access to a family. And the question is, which family will you choose? Jesus invites you in this passage to choose the winning team. We are not in a cosmic struggle against equal but opposing forces. We win. That is the story. And maybe this is the rub, that we will not always feel like we're winning. As individual believers, we will get sick. The people that we love will get sick. Our children sometimes go wayward. Our finances are still tight. Some of us still will have hard marriages. Some of us will not get married at all, even though we really want to. We will not always feel like we're winning. Even as congregations, they come and go. The underground, this thing itself, this is not forever. There might be a day where the underground no longer exists. But you know, it was never actually about the underground. Congregations will come and go. Books will be written and words can be weaponized against us, but the church that Jesus builds remains. And that's what I'm inviting you to join this morning. Join the church that is undefeatable. Not that you are undefeatable, but the church is undefeatable. It's not that the gates of hell can't come against the church, and the church is like somehow in this defensive posture trying to like keep itself from the enemy. No, it's the opposite. It's that the gates of hell are trying to ward off the encroaching church. And it doesn't stand a chance. If you think the church is something that is weak or is impotent, you have to look again. You have to look again. You are not a part of something that is delicate and fragile. It is the opposite, actually. Join the winning team this morning. I'll call up Emily and we'll wrap up. See, not an hour. I got you. Maybe it feels like an hour. If it feels like an hour, that's rough. But yeah, the church is not the kingdom, but it is an agent of the kingdom. It is keys to it and given authority that is cosmic in scope. There's a way that you can experience Jesus individually, and you can have some sort of authority over your life, but there is a way that we collectively experience Jesus, and we together have authority. Somehow we together, the sum is greater than its parts. Be a part of that family. You know, David Platt in the book Radical, he tells a story of how in the late 1940s, the United States government constructed an $80 million troop carrier for the Navy. And the purpose of that was to design a ship that could speedily carry 15,000 troops during times of war. By 1952, construction on the SS United States was complete. The ship could travel at 44 knots, which is about 51 miles per hour. And she could steam 10,000 miles without stopping for fuel or supplies. She could outrun any other ship and travel nonstop anywhere in the world in less than 10 days. This is impressive, an impressive vessel. The SS United States was the fastest and most reliable troop carrier in the world. But there was only one problem. She never actually carried any troops, at least not in any official capacity. Instead, the SS United became a luxury liner for presidents, heads of state, and a variety of other celebrities who traveled on her during the 17 years of her service. As a luxury liner, she couldn't carry 15,000 people. Instead, she could house just under 2,000 passengers. But those passengers, they can enjoy luxuries of 695 staterooms, 4 dining saloons, 3 bars, 2 theaters, 5 acres of open deck with a heated pool, 19 elevators, my friends, and the comfort of knowing that you are on the world's first fully air-conditioned passenger ship. Instead of a vessel used for battle during wartime, the SS United States became a means of indulgence for the wealthy patrons who desired to coast peacefully along the Atlantic. Things look a little bit different on a luxury liner than they do on a troop carrier. I mean, the faces of soldiers preparing for battle versus those enjoying bonbons are radically different. The conservation of resources on a troop carrier are sharply different than the opulence that characterizes a luxury liner. I mean, the pace at which the ship moves is by necessity different because the troop carrier has a place to go. It is trying to do something. The luxury liner, on the other hand, is free to just casually enjoy the ship. Looking at this passage, the reality is that the church that Jesus was building was meant to be a troop carrier. Urgent, purposeful, advancing on the enemy, not some sort of opulent thing built for comfort, but for battle. And so often we settle for some sort of luxury liner. We've lost our purpose, we've retrofitted it to our comfort, and instead of charging the gates of hell, we slink back and hope that hell does not come knocking at our door. And this morning I'm asking you, would you not settle for being a cruise ship, but would you be the church that Jesus built? Will you join that? Will you join the winning team? Join Peter in his confession of Jesus as the Messiah. Join the church that Jesus built on this confession. The reality is, if you want to encounter God, if you want to be a part of his purposes in the world, you have to join the church. I'm not asking you to join the underground. Like I said, the underground will come and go, but you have to join the church.